Kunches Maamer test, Perik base. Let's get ready. Today's going to be an amazing piece, amazing shear coming right up. Let's jump into it. What we were talking about yesterday was about how you have the inner facilities that affect you directly. For example, the Chochmah is in your brain, and the Midas are in your heart. And then you have the general, all-pervading makif parts of you. Like, for example, Rotzen, will, which is in every part of you equally. Let's see how this plays out l'mayla. Perik base. V'adugim calls it Yovan l'mayla. The analog. Yeah, you guys know a parable and a analogy. So, just like this, you can understand what's going on above. The Esed Spheres Tatzilus and the 10 Spheres of Atzilus, Hein, Bechinas, Islabshus, Oyers, Bekelim. They are in a way of investing the the energy into a kli, into a specific receptacle, into a specific landing pad, into a specific point of expression. And then the first is his sphere of Chochmah, is a sphere of Chochmah. V'nikras Rashis, and it's called the first. Lefi, so by the way, it's a pasuk, it's called Rashis. It says Rashis Chochmah. So we see that Chochmah is called Rashis, the first. It's the first one. It's the first point of expression. It's the first Svira, it's the first energy to come directly into Ishtalshus. Lefi, she raises Ishtalshus. So the real reason why it's called the first one in the Pasuk is because it's the beginning of Ishtalshus. It's first of Chochmah, Ishtalshus is first of Binah, and from Chochmah comes down to Binah. So Chochmah and Binah, the way they work l'mayla, we can understand from the way they work in us. Bichlal, everything in Chassidus, it says, from my flesh I shall see God. Meaning, we see from within ourselves, Hashem made us in a way that we can understand from within ourselves how things work l'mayla. You can see this when it says in Parshas Bereishis that I will make man in our image. Yeah? Na'asa Adam b'tzalmeinu. V'tzelem elikim bara Yisrael. In the image of Hashem, man was made. What does that mean in the image of Hashem? Hashem doesn't look like anything. Rather, it means the same way Hashem expresses himself, that's the way that people are made. So let's look within people. How's the first point being Chochmah leading to the second point of Binah, look in a person? Just like the way it is in a person's abilities in the soul, that the point of Chochmah shines into understanding of Binah. So what happens is, let's say you want to have an idea. Anyone have any ideas for me, for example, in this class? No? To expand what? To expand the classroom. Beautiful. So you have this genius idea to expand the classroom. Now, you didn't have that idea before. Now you have Chochmah allows you to open up to new perspectives and have a new point of an idea. But expanding the classroom is just a one-line point. But we still have to figure out, after saying, I want to expand the classroom, now you're going to be like, 1 second. You have to bring down that point, that idea, that inspiration into Binah, into figuring out the details, yeah? Menachem, what details do you have to figure out about expanding the classroom? How are you going to move the walls? Whether the building's going to need more supports, where you're going to get funding from, what design do you want your new, bigger classroom to look like? There's so many details. So from Chochmah, the idea comes down to Binah, the contemplation. That's why we spoke about in previous shurim, the 3 C's, Chochmah, Binah, Das. Conception, contemplation, connection. So, Binah, he aim abonim. Binah is called the mother of the children. What does that mean? What are the children? Shemay Lida, it gives birth as a midas to the midas. So Binah gives birth to midas. How does this work? So you had this idea in Chochmah to expand the classroom. Now in Binah, you're figuring out all the details and you're thinking about it more and more. The more you think about your new, beautiful, improved classroom, the more you're going to work yourself up into a frenzy and excitement and love of having a new classroom and fear of having the same claustrophobic small classroom. The more you think about it. Now, does anyone see a problem with what we learnt just now?
We don't need a new classroom.
That's funny. Not that we don't need a new classroom, rather that we always learn that Das is connection. Das is what connects the mind to the heart. So this isn't the topic of today's shir, so I'm just going to say it very short. Binah gives birth to new midas. Das nurtures them and lets them grow and be healthy and survive. Meaning, if you think about something, if you're thinking about your idea, you're going to get so excited and you're going to give birth to emotions. But then you're going to start thinking about something else and those emotions are going to die. They're going to disappear. They're not going to be long-term emotions, and therefore, if they're not long-term, they're not real emotions. They're just superficial. they came and went like hay in the breeze. So rather what you need is das, which is connection. When you sit down and think about your idea of the completed classroom, once you've finished figuring out all the details, and now you just play it over again and again, and you drill it into your head, and you make it part of your life, then it's going to have long-term effect on you to the point of long-term emotions. That every time someone mentions expanded classroom, you're like, I love expanded classrooms. Fine. Now that we got that down and we figured out how a person works with Chochmah and Binah and Midas, in a Keinu b'Sfiras al Yonis, so too with Hashem's Sfiras, the way Hashem expresses Himself. Shmei Chochmah mishtal shel al Binah, Chochmah leads to Binah, and Minah Meichin el Midas, and from Meichin to Midas. So, with the best of our understanding from our human marshal, because we don't know what Hashem's looks like, the same thing we have by Hashem. That Hashem allows a little point of Ein Sof, a little ray of the infinite to come into the spiritual universe through Chochmah. And from there it comes to Binah to get all the details to be built up in a more specific way. And from there it comes down to the Midas. That the Midas by Hashem would be Chesed, which by us would be giving and kindness. By Hashem would be whether to allow more flow into the world. Or Gevura, which means whether to hold back. So, either way, both by us and by Hashem, Chochmah is the starting point. Point 1, start here. Pass, go, and collect $200. All of this is investing the oir, the energy, into the kalim, into specific points of expression. So now we got it. Chochmah, Binah, Das, you name it. The main point is, it's all investing into a specific point, a specific area. You have a parking spot for your nice Lamborghini, or you have a parking spot for your clap-down Honda. Either way, they have a specific place. A time, a place, everything's very well organized. Aval are in Soif, however, Hashem's infinite are the infinite energy, the direct flow, ray from Hashem. It's above Ishtalshos, it's above the whole spiritual universe. Hubechens are makif. That's a all-pervading or makif that surrounds. Literally, it means surrounds. But the Alter explains in Tanya that makif, meaning surrounds, doesn't mean that Hashem surrounds the world like He's outside of it. Rather, He's in the world in a surrounding way, a way in the world that doesn't directly affect it. It's not personalized. It's not invested into the direct landing spots and the direct points of expressions. So, we have makif it's everywhere, but it doesn't affect in a personalized way. It's one size fits all. Yeah, you guys can go on Amazon and look up every size of shoes. Shoes is something that has to be pnimi. It has to directly fit your foot. There's size 1, 2, 3. There's kid sizes, women sizes, men sizes, different colors. Then you go and you look up a baseball cap. One size fits all. That's it. Not made for you. Not personalized. Like we explained earlier, Perek Aleph in the first Perek, meaning we had in yesterday's shir, for example, in someone's rotzen, his will in his nefesh, doesn't have a specific part of the body it invests itself in. Rather, the imkain, if so, it doesn't come in a personalized way, rather in a general way. So let's say rotzen, will, as opposed to your mind, your intellect is invested in your brain, and your emotions are invested in your heart, and your fine motor function in your hands, and your gross motor function in your legs. Will, what you want deep down, that's in all parts of you equally. So to our makif, it's everywhere at the same time, but because it's everywhere, it's nowhere specific. You guys get it? So let me just give you an example of a makif, because this is going to be very important to understand how Hashem comes into the world. We're about to explain that it's just like you're sitting in shir. Let's say you have a really good teacher. Name a really good teacher. So you have Rabbi Yoel, yeah? So Rabbi Yoel is giving a shir, and you're sitting in the back. His teaching, his voice is filling up the whole room. Everyone in the room can hear him. Now there are some guys in the room that listen very intently, and his message comes into their mind and their feelings, so they receive his message in an inner way, in a pneumistic way, in a way that it's invested in the kalim of their understanding. And then some people are sitting there and they fall asleep in the back of shir. So they're in the room, and their ear lobes, their eardrums are receiving the sound waves, but it doesn't make any effect on them. They're there, they're getting it. There are some guys who are spacing out. There's some guys who are listening so intently, but they just don't understand. All of them, they receive, they're there, but it doesn't deeply affect them. So what's the point of it? They'll definitely walk away saying, wow, I was by Rabbi Yoel's shir, and it was an interesting experience. It was an incredible experience. He's such a deep person. What did he speak about? I don't know. So let's see how that works with Hashem being in the world. So let me ask you, where is Hashem? Help me out, guys. Where is Hashem? Where is Hashem? Everywhere. So, can you see Hashem? Is this Hashem? Yes. He says it's Hashem. Do you say it's Hashem? Will you bow down to this mic? Will you declare this mic the God of Israel? Chas v'shalom. Because, where is Hashem? Hashem is everywhere. And everything is part of Hashem, but it is not Hashem. Let's find out. You ready? You ready for this? Similarly, it's understood that dogma l'mayla, the example of this above, ba'ar and soif, with Hashem's infinite arsh, sh'l'mayla mishtalshos, it's above the whole spiritual universe, above the whole shtalshos. She'enim mislabish b'kelim, it's not invested into vessels, into specific points of expression. Kimo b'chens armakiv, rather it's in a general energy. It affects everything in the same way, equally. According to this, we can understand what? In Seder Shtalshalos, within the spiritual universe, Yesh din v'cheshbon, there's a specific calculation and judgment in regards to who gets what. So let's say you do the right thing, Hashem will give you more blessings and more success and more spirituality. And if you do the wrong thing, less. But on the other hand, once you go above the spiritual universe, above Ishtalshus, you go to the place where Hashem is everywhere at the same time, where Hashem relates to the entire world equally, where it's not personalized, where it's one size fits all. Hashem's brachas, Hashem's hashpah, Hashem's effects of the world does not come down in specific, calculated judgment, a way of who gets what. It's one size fits all. It's just anyone who taps into this, anyone who signs up, gets whatever they want. Because in Seder Shtalshus, within the spiritual universe, within figuring things out, within one step at a time, within the specific shoe sizes, because this is a inner, specific, personalized energy, of investing the energy into points of expression, you need a good kli, you need a good point of expression that's a fitting place for the or. So let's say you want to keep your water somewhere. Water is a very specific existing entity. You need a cup or a bottle. As opposed to if you want to store energy somewhere, you're going to need a battery. Or what other things do you like storing? Guys, give me a hint. If you want to keep meat somewhere, you're going to have to keep it in a fridge or a freezer. What other things do you like storing? Toothbrush. You can put that anywhere. Maybe that's like the R makif. Chemicals. You're going to have to put it in a specific beaker. You don't want to keep that lying around on your kitchen table. You know what? They put the chemicals in the wrong place and there's a big fire. That's very unfortunate. So, if you want to keep fire somewhere, you should probably have a fireplace. So when Hashem's coming to a personalized way into the world, you have to be a fitting place. If you want to receive blessings from Hashem, if you want to receive hashpah from Hashem, if you want to have a connection to Hashem, you have to be the right type of receptacle. You have to be a person who's involved in Torah mitzvahs. You have to not be a person who's involved in Averis. If you're a person who's involved in Averis, you'd be like trying to put your chemicals in a beaker with holes all over it. Menachem, what's going to happen if you put your chemical in a beaker with holes in it? You can drink it. I'm not sure if that's such a good idea. But maybe it'll spill all over the place, So, then, you need a kli that's fitting for the revelation of the ar. And whatever is not fitting for the gili ar, let's say you're sitting in the back of Rabbi Yoel's shir, and you've never learned Chassidus before, so you're completely lost. You're not going to be able to understand it. You won't get anywhere. Now here's the $1 million question. What is the kli for the Gilead art? What is the point of expression? Menachem, just in time. What is the kli? What is the expression point? What is the place to receive Hashem's or? My share. Okay, maybe. The kli is called bittul. Bittul literally means self-nullification. Or if you look in the old translations of Chassidus, they call it self-effacement. You know those old translations that are like such fancy English that no one understands it, and you have to look in the Hebrew to figure out what the English means? So, what does bittul mean? It doesn't mean making yourself nothing. It means making space for Hashem. Making yourself about Hashem. Looking deep inside yourself and saying, am I a yid who's an expression of Hashem? Am I a neshama? Or am I a ego, power, and money machine? It depends. So if you put aside the lust, the ego, the power, the money, you say, forget about all that. I just want to express my inner connection to Hashem. That's bittul. Just making room for Hashem in your life. Making your life about Hashem. Now the Alter Rebbe is going to say something very important. The Rebbe Shab is going to say something very important that you'll find in Tanya in Perek Vav. Whatever is bottled to Elikus, whatever makes room in itself, nullifies its own will towards Elikus, hu hakli haroi l'kabel gilui ar. That's the fitting place. That's the fitting point of expression for Hashem's revelation, for Hashem's energy, for Hashem's blessings, for Hashem's flow, flux. Okay, dua, like it's known, Torah and say shoyer b'makom habotel davke. That the infinitude, Hashem's infinite light, that comes into a place that is bottled to it, a place that is nullified to it, a place that allows it in. So remember how we said Hashem is everywhere? So if Hashem's everywhere, how come we don't all just experience Hashem? How come we don't all just have infinite blessings? Menachem, do you have infinite blessings in your life? Sure, he has. Okay, good. One day you're gonna have to teach me your ways. But why is Hashem everywhere yet we don't feel it? Because Hashem is here. Just like someone sitting back of Rabbi Yoel's shir, and he's listening, but he has the decision whether to concentrate and allow it into his brain and into his feelings, or to think about other things, and then he's there, but it doesn't affect him. There, but not there. Same thing, Hashem's everywhere. Now, are we going to make space for him in ourselves? Are we going to allow him into us? You should know there was one time of Farbrengen in 770, there was a surprise for Farbrengen, and there was a group of guests, I believe from Eretz Yisrael, but they had a flight that day. But the Rebbe had a surprise for Farbrengen, so they ran to Farbrengen. The whole time they were nervous. They were checking the clock every 2 minutes to see if they're going to make it to their flight. So after a while, the Rebbe said by Farbrengen, L'chaim, to those who are here but not here, and those that are not here but here. Meaning some people in the room are not really present. They're just thinking about their flight. And some people far away, wherever they are, they're thinking about the Rebbe's Farbrengen. So, Hashem's everywhere, but are we going to allow him into ourselves? Therefore, because bittul is what lets Hashem into your life, Ikar Ashras Ein Sof, the main drawing down of Hashem's infinitude, Hu b'Chochmah davka. It's specifically in Chochmah. You ready for why? Lefisha Chochmah Koyachmah. Because Chochmah is called Koyachmah. Now, yesterday's year we explained two meanings of the words Koyachmah. The power of what? And here, we're going to explain a third meaning. Koyachmah means, Koyach means the ability, Ma means what? Like what is it? It's nothing. The ability that is what? The ability, the koyach, Chochmah itself is bittul. Chochmah is nothing. Chochmah does not have any opinions of its own. Chochmah is the part of yourself that you could say, I'm putting myself aside and listening to what you have to say. Chochmah is the part of yourself that you say, forget about all my ideas and preconceived notions. I'm open to something new. So, because Chochmah is the part of you that is bottled, the part of you that puts yourself aside, therefore, Shubachinas HaBittul, that's Bittul. Like it says in Tanya over there, therefore it's the part that allows Hashem into your life. By the way, the part of Tanya that we just quoted, Perek Lamed Hey, is the only place in Tanya that Alter Rebbe directly quotes the Maggid HaMizrich. Fun fact. It says in the Agah over there, that Chochmah, the reason Chochmah is the landing place for Elikus, the place that Hashem comes into your life through Chochmah, because Chochmah itself is Bittul. So, before we go weiter, I'd like to say the following story about bittul, about self-nullification, about putting yourself aside for a greater purpose. Because some people are yeshus monsters. Some people, their entire life is dedicated to ego and self-glorification and eating more chocolate. And some people put themselves aside. They don't have such a big opinion of themselves. So, firstly, did I ever tell you the story of Pinya Korf and the shopping bags? Pinya Korf was a Chassidus Yid, a Mashpia in Crown Heights. And he was known for being a very bittul Yid. He didn't have such a big opinion of himself. So he was one time walking down the street with some shopping bags he was taking home. So there was some young father pushing a double stroller down the street with two little kids in the stroller. And as they're going past Pinya, one of the kids goes and kicks Pinya's bag. Very cheeky. It's 2-year-old kid, sees this old rabbi walking down the street with shopping bags, kicks his bag. So his father stops and is horrified. This respected mashpia, his kid just did something chutzpahdik. So the father's like, say sorry. So Pinya turns around and he looks at the kid, looks at this baby, this 2-year-old, and he's like, I'm sorry my bag hit your foot. Isn't that incredible? Not only did he think the guy was talking to him and telling him to say sorry, and he thought that made sense, he also thought that was an acceptable proposition. And he's like, oh, he said say sorry. Okay, I should apologize. Isn't that incredible? Most people, if I was some respected rabbi walking down the street, and someone told me to say sorry to I thought someone said sorry, I'd either think they're talking to a kid, or I'd think that this guy really deserves what's coming to him. Pinya, he never thought such a thing. He said sorry. Okay, let's continue a bit weiter. I have another few good stories. But, what's the opposite of bittul? Wait, 1 second. Before we go weiter, 1 second. I need to tell you a really good story that goes like this. There was once, Mendel Futterfass and Shmuel David Reichik were driving through the Californian countryside. You see, they would team up for 2 months a year and go collecting money together. Shmuel David for mostly educational institutions in California, I believe, and Mendel mostly for helping Yidden stuck behind the Iron Curtain in Russia. So he had an organization he'd support, Ezras Achim. So they're driving. They couldn't drive, I believe. So they had a guy, a local businessman. His name was Mr. Fine, good Jewish name. And they were driving to a town in California. So Mr. Fine's making small talk. Mendel's sitting in the front, and Shmuel David's in the back. So he asks Mendel, so Rabbi, what do you do? What do you do usually for a living? So Mendel, who was both one of the most respected mashpiyim, spiritual mentors in Lubavitch, as well as the head of this massive organization helping Jews in Russia, he's someone who dedicated his life selflessly to others. He said, I'm a teacher. So Shmuel David says from the back, he's in charge of the Russian learning program, meaning to say that he's in charge of every Jewish school in Russia that's operating under the nose of the communist government. So Mr. Fine, not knowing any better, he said, very nice. Very nice. He teaches a class of Russian students. Fine, we see a Yid like Mendel. It wasn't important to him to get his honor. He was doing what he needed to do. He put himself aside. If the Yidden in Russia who need his help, he'll help them. If there's Yidden somewhere else who need help, he'll help them. Fine. Avol, the opposite. Let's look at the other opposite. However, Mashul b'chinas Yeshus, whatever's in the way of ego, ain't even who Yechilim Lodu. You know what Hashem says in the Gemara? There's not enough room for the two of us in this town. Town ain't big enough for the two of us. I and he cannot dwell together. Because if you think about it, Hashem's here. The question is whether you're letting him in. So if you're an egotist, if you're walking around like you own the town, if you're not interested in Hashem, fine. So Hashem's here, but you're not letting him into you in a personal way. If you put yourself aside, you let Hashem into you. You make room for him. So there's not enough space for me and Hashem if you're being an egotist. She'ein kli, what does that mean? That is not a fitting place and not a point of expression. L'gilui or b'chayis l'ki, for Hashem's or, for Hashem's godliness, for Hashem's energy. Ki'im rather misha bottle davka, specifically someone who is bottle, who set aside. And I want to say, that Rabbi Yisrael of Ruzhin said an amazing word. He once told his chassidim, I would rather hang out with a crowd of sinners than a crowd of egotists, of hotshots. And his chassidim were very surprised. No, halachically, you're not supposed to hang out with sinners. And he told them, listen, sinners, what does Hashem say about them? He says, Hashoichen itam b'soich teirasim, b'soich tumasam. The teirasim one, the Alter Rebbe says in Perek Chafei. So Hashem says, I dwell with the Yidden even in their impurity. But what does he say about the egotists? Hashem says, I and he can't dwell in the same place. So if I'm hanging out with sinners, at least Hashem's there with me. Hashem's also hanging out with him. If I'm hanging out with egotists, there's no space for Hashem there. They're taking up all the space. So rather, specifically someone who's nullified, sets himself aside, meaning the whole side of Kedusha. That Kedusha equals Bittul. That's what it says in Perek Vav. What is holiness? Well, Hashem's everywhere, so anything could be holy. Just anything that nullifies itself, that sets itself aside, that lets itself to be expression for Hashem's truth, that is what's holy. By the way, if you're ever wondering what is holiness, it's just something that expresses Hashem in the world. And that could be you. It could be anything if you use it for the right cause. So, that's where Hashem's Kedusha is. So now, last point of today. This is the fact. This explains. Getting back to our point about why good things happen to bad people. That once you're within Ishtalshalos, once you're within a personal connection to Hashem, there's very specific judgment, there's a calculation. How connected to Hashem are you? How many blessings you're going to have? Are you fitting for Hashem's art to come into it? And the godly energy. Because whatever is not bottled to Hashem, whatever is an egotist, whatever is blocking Hashem's revelation, it's going to be a dover. Dover nifred b'fnei atzmai means something separate by itself. Now that's a line from Tanya, from Perek Yud Tes. And Rav Nissen Nemenov would teach Tanya, he would read it very slowly. The person, someone who's an egotist, is a dover, is a thing, he's a nifred, he's separate, he's b'fnei atzmai, he's by himself. Fine. So if someone's separate, it's like, I don't want Hashem, I'm my own guy, I'm a self-made man. Okay, you don't want Hashem, you won't be received from Hashem. So how does he exist? Everything has to come from Hashem to exist. He only receives in a backwards way, in the outer way from Hashem, like we explained, like we explained in the previous Yorim. You guys remember that? Meaning Kabbalah's Chayos, the Sitra Achra, in the way that Klippa receives Chayos, it receives in a backwards way, in an outer way, in a superficial way. That's why they're called other gods, because they look at themselves as a self-entity, and therefore they block out Hashem. So they only receive from Elikim, they only receive from Hashem, Acherim in the way of Acharaim, in a backwards way. Rather, who does receive from Hashem in a personal way? Someone who is nullified to Hashem, and he keeps Hashem's will. He is fitting to have direct, personalized connection, blessing, flow, elikus from Hashem. Kitzer, let's say in short what we said today. Esses Spheres Atzilus, the 10 spheres of Atzilus, Heim Oyers Pnimium. They're personalized Oyers. That are invested in the fitting points of expression. And they come in a way of Hishtalshalos, in a step-by-step personalized way. And the first step of that, the landing pad for Elikus to get into your whole system, is Chochmah. You know why? Because Chochmah, it's the ability of Bittul. It's the ability to set yourself aside. It's the ability that says, I'm nothing. I'm open to hearing what you have to say. And Ashba, your connection to Hashem, is according to how much Bittul you have. Hashem's here. All you have to do is make more room for Him. The Bittul Kli Roy Lashros Kishos Yisparach. That Bittul, putting yourself aside, is the fitting vessel, receptacle, landing pad, point of expression, shoe size, for having Hashem's godliness dwell within you. Now, last story, there was a Yid, Nosan Nota of Manchester. Yeah, not to be confused with the town of Manchester in England. Manchester is somewhere in Eastern Europe. And Nosan Nota was a Rav. He was the rabbi of town. He was a well-respected individual. He was an incredible chassid. So one time he traveled to Lubavitch to visit his Rebbe. I believe it was the Rebbe Maharash. And there was a young man, a young chassid, who heard that the great chassid of Nosan Nota came to town. He was so excited. He put on his best suit and tie. Probably didn't have a tie. And his best suit was probably his only suit. But anyways, he runs off to the hotel, which hotel means someone's house with a spare bedroom, where Reb Nosan Nota was staying. And as he's running towards it, he sees someone leaving the hotel. Some older Yid. And he says, excuse me, is the great Reb Nosan Nota, the rabbi of Manchester, staying here? So this Yid tells him, this Nosan Nota, he's not what they make him out to be. So this young man gets so angry about this chutzpah, and he slaps the old man in the face. He says, how dare you show such chutzpah to the great, famous, humble Rav Nosson Noto, whose humility is famous throughout the country. And with that, he storms into the hotel, ready to meet this great chassid, have his life changed. And he asks people, where can I find the great, famously humble Rav Nosson Noto? And I say, Rav Nosson Noto? He just walked down a minute ago. You probably saw him on your way in. This guy realized what happened. He went running. He said, please, please forgive me. So Rav Nosson says, forgive you? For what? You didn't do anything to insult me. You see, he was someone who, his humility wasn't like some people who are busy showing everyone how humble they are. It's the opposite of humility. His humility was, he genuinely thought that he was nothing special. He genuinely thought someone else hitting him in the face was whatever, fine. He had absolutely no ego for himself. Fine, we're going to have to speak more about Bittul tomorrow. So excited.